one of our mantras is a better quality of life for all through mobility, accessibility, job creation, and local ownership. So in this episode, we're going to talk about why do some cities have greater appeal, have the ability to win talent and investment and actually retain it, that there's not constantly an open faucet or a drain where people are coming and going. And actually, that's not just for cities. That's actually good application for businesses. Can you hire talent? Can you gain investment? But can you retain it and build on that beginning point? So just to start out, we're going to have a few of the kind of coverage points over these segments. We're going to first talk about why talent always follows opportunity, but it also follows ease of living. And the overarching umbrella here is absolutely quality of life. And we can start to segment different age groups, populations, interests, and so forth, and that'll certainly drive a lot of the conversation. Mobility, which certainly is our focus area, is really about mobility reducing friction in daily life. We are certainly multi-generational, interested in not only building our work, building our families, building our businesses, but we also want to do it with a new sense of flexibility, that we're not controlled always by our outside environment, that we actually have better control over it. And certainly city living, urban design, and the issue of transportation are very, very much quality of life issues. And we can certainly talk about cost of living and schools, depending on your age bracket and so forth. The next one is really around investors looking for efficiencies, not just incentivized or incentives. And that is probably could unpack a number of episodes in and of itself. And then lastly, cities are actually competing globally, no longer even nationally or regionally. And this has happened really pre-pandemic, but ever more so, where people were making what sometimes sounded like sudden decisions. I am moving from the north to the south. I am moving from urban center to suburban or rural. And this was not just within state or region. This is actually picking up and moving, much to employers or family surprise. So really this is around people increasingly choose cities where commuting is predictable, where it's flexible, where it's, we use a word at SNAAP called just relatable. Is it something that I can relate to? We, in prior episodes, talked very much about we may be our human behavior will have us making decisions that may not always be the most efficient on face value, but when we talk about the friction or the drag or the duress of transportation, we actually find ourselves making decisions that are maybe feel like we're getting home sooner, getting to our destination sooner, but actually may take longer. But it's an ease of mobility and access to quality of life and services and employment and so forth. So really, as we continue to talk about this, we're going to continue this around high growth cities tend to have strong mobility systems. Now, the key things are certainly in cities are going to be cost of living, accessibility to lifestyle, and sometimes that's the actual airport itself, just very simply. Increasingly, that's now referred to as a multimodal location, where airports will have a hub of train or tram transit, and then bus rapid transit and micromobility all layered through that. Certainly, SNAAP Transportation invites the conversation to have us as the gap filler above traffic, a new type of micromobility, but really it's a personal monorail, personal rapid transit system. And so we'll continue to include that in the dialogue. And then employers are considering how easy is it for employees and customers to access their services or benefit from their presence in a given location. Again, whether that's airport, providing services, support, and all those other factors. And then quality of life is just not, it's just Well, it's multifaceted. Is how much time do you want to be spend in traffic or in chokeholds of you being able to control your day and so forth? I've said it in prior episodes, say it often in presentations. No matter who you are, what you think about today, you will consider at least two things. Number one, you will consider what you're going to eat and where you're going to eat it. And the second thing is you're going to consider, how do I navigate my life around traffic today? Continuing on this episode and this segment is really how mobility shapes business decisions. And we're going to talk about both site selection. Where are we going to have a business? And that'll include mobility matrix. Supply chains, depending on what your business is or your services are, supply chains are really going to be dependent on infrastructure reliability. And boy, that can unpack a whole conversation there. Employee commute. There is not enough discussion around the future of mobility and positively impacting employee quality of life. It's not just the 8 or 10 hours we spend at the office, it's the hour each way getting there and the reliability and how do you feel when you arrive at your work location. And then certainly accessibility overall affects just the customer reach. Who can reach us, whether we're a brick and mortar or we're a logistics supplier, how are people going to access our program services and business? So companies are going to evaluate really, and we live in the Tampa Bay area, certainly our headquarters is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And let me tell you, everything is about mobility. You talk about cost of living, absolutely. Cost of housing, absolutely. But I will tell you right underneath that layer, and it doesn't apply just here or in Chattanooga or in Greenville, South Carolina or Miami or Dubai or Sao Paulo, is the issue of mobility. So as we continue to flip to the business side of this, when companies decide where they're going to expand or locate, mobility is no longer the secondary factor. It is literally central. If you imagine a business wanting to start in a downtown location, how do you get X number, 50 employees, 250 employees in and out of the location? How does that impact your bottom line and what you're actually having to compensate your team for? And then if you are a regional or a national product or service provider, are your team having to get in and out of not only central office, but also in airports and transportation modalities? But think about it for a second. If your employees can't get to work efficiently, and there are HR studies that say that major corporations will not hold meetings, and these are major global corporations, will not hold meetings at certain times because of a lack of reliability of employees being in the office or even in a remote location. So again, it's not just an inconvenience, it is an expensive cost of reducing efficiency and reducing the ability for really team collaboration. It would be just simply one example. Mobility affects everything from hiring to logistics to actually customer success. And cities that now can offer seamless mobility in its best language are certainly going to be those ones that are most attractive for new businesses, for greater investment, and absolutely retaining top talent. Now, I've mentioned it in a couple of these segments now, and really this is a focus on accessibility as really a new differentiator. And accessibility is broader than just transportation. We've talked about the first mile and the last mile as solution. Those solutions are absolutely critical. But inclusive mobility expands your workforce participation. And then ultimately, digital and physical access are now at that converging point. So as we continue, cities are now judged on how easily everyone can move, not just the drivers. When you look at the gentrification or reurbanization of city centers, it's often almost a red line around a lot of these areas, and it would be that mile, 3 miles, 5 miles. And we've talked about this, that you may have a 15-mile commute, and the first 10 miles is going to be 12, maybe 15 minutes. But it's the last mile to 5 miles that could triple, quadruple, or worse your commute on the day. And we cannot boil this down to just simply loss of time. By the time that person, that employee, that leader, that service provider gets to their destination, they are not the whole person that they left point A from. So when we talk about transit deserts or transit traffic jams and chokeholds, these are the kind of impact points that are going to cause that friction that is debilitating to quality of life, and certainly those people that are conducting business throughout. And accessibility is actually connecting the jobs and education and healthcare, critical key components of any good city, and quality of life and opportunity for growth, multi-generational growth, really with education and healthcare and job creation. Again, I will insert here SNAAP Transportation. While we are a personal rapid transit ecosystem, a major component of our ecosystem is around better quality of life for all through mobility, accessibility, job creation, and local ownership of the ecosystem. So as we finish this segment off around really accessibility being a key component, is really, can everybody be included and get the same opportunities? Can a person who lives in the city or outside of that 5 mile have the same accessibility to entertainment, jobs, healthcare, education, depending on where their location is? And is that a real true factor for everybody? And can cities now solve this by unlocking new segments of the population? And that's just not good policy. That's actually smart city and smart economics. To have a dynamic, accessible region is critical to employment, retaining great talent, educational progress, healthcare access, and a dynamic, fluid, healthy economic location, a really economic powerhouse. So again, people are much more likely to participate the stronger your city becomes in being an accessible city for all. So really, we've touched on all this, and this is kind of just honing in that really the economic engine of any city is transportation. We look at really historically trucking, and with our headquarters at SNAAP Transportation in Chattanooga, it was a logistics hub of America, both train and air and road, for really generations, let's certainly say many, many decades. But transportation drives productivity. Congestion has an absolutely measurable economic cost. Infrastructure investment will fuel the growth, but traditional, conventional infrastructure is still problematic. We in the United States know that every time we talk about an infrastructure built at the national level, it is not necessarily realized at the state or regional level, and then at the local level, by the time that money is realized in even a city budget, it's often not even a fraction of what's needed to keep up with infrastructure challenges. Mobility impacts the GDP at every city level. So as we dive in a little bit more, the time lost in traffic translates directly into loss of economic input. We touched on that in a prior episode. Efficient systems increase the labor market reach. It's just that simple. We talked about it again. The ability for people to go from point A to point B, to have that as a seamless and non-friction opportunity, is simply more and more what cities need to do to draw on that talent, to draw on investment, and have that really healthy economy. infrastructure investments yield the long-term results and returns. Now, this is really, really important. We don't, certainly at SNAAP, we have our strong views. We don't say don't do certain things. What we're inviting is people to take a real serious look at 10% of time, consideration, budget, resources, planning in every segment of city, stakeholders, commercial, residential developers, entertainment, arts, sports, venues, college, university, transportation hubs, all of these locations to truly consider the newest forms of urban mobility. And yes, so much attention has been paid to air taxis, fly-in cars. But when we talk about it at SNAAP Transportation, we want to help alleviate traffic congestion at a fraction of the cost. And air taxis won't do it. Autonomous vehicles won't do it. Electric vehicles don't do it. Ride share certainly has had an impact and continue. But again, what is the new solution that will help alleviate traffic congestion? Cities with strong mobility systems consistently outperform any other city economically, and those facts can easily bear itself out. So every minute spent in traffic is lost productivity. I mentioned it before. HR departments and leadership teams are grappling with the fact is, hey, we can't have meetings at certain times of the day. You've now constricted your productivity of that group because they're in traffic or unpredictable. I'll tell you here in Tampa, we have one manufacturer here. They have built a small city at their location. And when I say small city, I'm talking about restaurants and cafes and kind of lifestyle at the work location. The reason that was done is because employees cannot leave the location and get any distance away for food, resources, services, whatever the case may be, in an hour window of lunch hour. And so when people arrive at their work location as early as 7 a.m., they really will be there until 6 p.m. So that employer had to figure out how can we improve work experience without losing them when they try to leave at a lunch hour. And that is certainly a descriptive of what traffic can do and lack of productivity, lack of pleasure, lack of enjoyment. So in many ways, mobility is that invisible infrastructure powering everything else in the society, whether it's logistics, whether it's access to transportation hubs, quality of life services, education. That is simply going to be a critical piece in every city, and certainly in the future design of cities where we emphasize scalability, resiliency, sustainability to improve quality of life for all. To conclude, this episode is really to talk about what cities must do to stay competitive, and we've touched on all of them. So first of all, really invest in multimodal systems. And I will get a chuckle. I won't call the city's name out, but it's here in the U.S. Big press release about this particular urban center creating a multimodal transportation hub. And in all candor, it was a train station with a bus station put near it, and then micromobility scooters and the ability to access cabs and bikes and so forth. And frankly, that was really just moving the same chairs on the same ship, not anything really new. The second is really where a city is going to have to prioritize user experience, not just infrastructure. And we've talked about this, is that human behavior is predictable, and we want to make sure that we're designing future mobility systems based on human behavior, not just what we would see as efficiencies. What we need to focus on is human behavior and human decision-making and relatability, adoptability, human-centered experiences, rather than adding another road, building another bridge, adding a rapid transit bus lane, another high occupancy vehicle lane. And that is all focused on moving cars. And we know that the problem underpinning all of these conversations is traffic congestion caused by 80% single occupant vehicles on roads throughout the world. And that problem certainly is getting worse, with 1.2 billion vehicles on roads today, expected to go to 2 billion in less than 10 years. So we always say at SNAAP, if you think the problem's bad now, wait just 5 years when you can't get product and services and access to all of these basic things that we presently point over there and say, it's a bad problem there in Miami or New York or Mumbai or Dubai or Sao Paulo. But when it's at your doorstep, it becomes that imperative. So planning to do something differently is really where we want to focus people's attention. And then really leverage data and technology. That seems is rather obvious. And then align mobility with an economic strategy. Again, maybe you're a landlocked city or state versus a city, certainly Tampa Bay, where you have a great waterfront and port opportunity, or you have a transportation hub and a world-class airport, and then the ability to really leverage all of those components. The Middle East, in particular, as this broadcast is being taped, still suffering under war and strife. But the Middle East is actually accelerating their infrastructure. They're converting their oil wealth into a broad portfolio of offering. But critically, they are leveraging their geographic location as a leverage point, whether it's access to the Far East and the West, whether it's a hub of great economic opportunity and business friendly. And then obviously everything that they're doing is about quality of life, infrastructure, mobility, and accessibility as another great example. So what does the future mean for cities? As cities that want to stay competitive are going to have to rethink mobility at its bottom line, not as just a public service alone, but it has to be considered a strategic asset. And this means investing in systems that work together, that seamlessness. Again, thinking of the subway to the on-ground rail to micromobility solutions, even to air taxis. How do all of these fit? And then because at the end of the day, the city that moves the best will win. They attract the talent, they grow business, they have a seamless mobility logistics system, and they build economies that will last generation to generation. Again, I'm Andrew Cary, co-founder, CEO of SNAAP Transportation. If you'd like to find out more about our work, about SNAAP Transportation ecosystem, first personal rapid transit system in the world, and our whole ecosystem that's focused around job creation, accessibility, mobility, and local ownership, you can send an email to info@ridesnap, snap as always with 2ways.com. You can follow us across all social media platforms at snap, always with 2ways.transportation. And of course, join us, follow us, like, and share and comment so we can reach out to you as we bring SNAAP Transportation to the global marketplace.